Today's episode, we're going to talk about something that every person who is in first response deals with, and that is pain, but not just pain, it's how to essentially take that pain and use it as a way to empower your performance, find your deeper self, and show up for life the way that you want to. I'm really stoked to hear your story and just what you've dealt with, because you've dealt with a lot of pain.
A lot of pain. Yes, this would be a good episode to dive into.
Right out of the gate, what are, over your 12 years in the fire service?
14 years.
14 years in the fire service. How many injuries have you dealt with that you can remember?
I've come off the line 3 times for injuries where I couldn't just absolutely push through. And I remember tearing my rotator cuff, and I didn't want to get the surgery because I was right at the borderline where the surgeon wanted to operate because they pushed that. But also he said there's a chance I can repair it with just PT and rest. So I came off the line and I spent 6 weeks light duty and did PT. And I wasn't 100% repaired and back to where I needed to be when I went right back to duty, because after 6 weeks, that was enough for me to be in the office, and I felt better.
Okay. So you didn't go to the line, you went back to the office.
I went back to the office for 6 weeks, and then from there I went back to the line. Probably 4 weeks too early.
Oh, wow.
Because I could have used the last little bit of PT and rest before going right back, and then house fire and pushing ladders. I was on the truck at the time, so I was doing a lot of physical manpower, even more so than the typical job. And so that was the first time.
And rotator cuffs, they're really painful.
They're painful and they take forever to heal. And you use it way more often than you think. And I was working out of class, so when you reach behind you just to grab the notebook, every single time, it just hurts your shoulder. And sometimes, depending on the angle, you could be carrying something as light as the MDC or like a computer.
Oh, wow.
And depending on the angle, it just shocks through your arm. And other times you could perform and push a ladder up, no problem whatsoever. Just depended on the angles and how you're using your body.
How far into your career was the rotator cuff?
That was 4 years in.
4 years in.
So I'd already gone a long chunk, and I had little hurts along the way.
Right, we all do.
So
hyperextending a finger.
Yeah, I twisted my knee one time sliding down a ladder. And it was just enough where it was uncomfortable and I had to mind it throughout shift, but you can work through it. You can push through. It's going to blow over in about a week or 2 weeks. We've had dozens of those. And I mean, me personally, I've had dozens of those. And some of them probably shouldn't have pushed through, but they were borderline. And I think we have a different standard that we hold ourselves to. So we have to remember that for us, a rolled ankle isn't the same as normal population where you have a desk job. They don't have that extra pressure to have to come right back to the line.
Well, even like we talked about a couple episodes ago, that body hardening concept that I can deal with this, so I'll just push through.
Yeah. And being young, that is a huge advantage because I was young. My body was repairing a lot better on its own. And it was just easier then. I had less life stress. I wasn't a mom and trying to manage, a shift. Personal life, traveling, homeschooling. I wasn't managing all the things.
Yeah.
I just had to focus on myself. So there really is a difference as you get older too, and more years in the fire service. That really affects it.
Yeah. Okay, so that was the first one, the first major one.
That was the first major one.
Okay, and then how long before the next one?
Well, then I had my daughter. So that was another 3 years later, and that's significant body change.
Absolutely.
And that's one thing that's interesting is the first trimester, we're so vulnerable to toxins and things like that, but we're also more susceptible to pain. And because our body is moving, our ligaments are stretching, and we don't take that to mind or consideration because we're not full term or showing yet, as everyone calls that, but we're actually putting ourselves more at harm risk by staying working for your first trimester. So I came off as soon as I could, and I was on light duty for the full 9 months of my pregnancy. And so that was in itself just a long time to be on light duty. And then the recovery after. I came back exactly 12 weeks after. So I was 4 weeks postpartum and my appendix burst. So not only did I just have this huge traumatic, natural incident, I had my baby. And then 4 weeks later, my appendix burst and I was in the hospital having a surgery. That was not
Oh
expected.
my gosh.
Which the surgery itself has a recovery for 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah.
So now you compound and add that to what I was already going through. I didn't have enough sick time to stay off as long as I needed. So I went back right when my sick time was over at 12 weeks. And
Wow.
there wasn't even a pregnancy policy or maternity policy in place at the time. So coming back, there's no position I could ease my way back in, like a light duty or work in EMS or training, and then go to the line when I'm fully healed. I just went to my one option, go back to work,
Wow.
right to 24-hour shifts again.
And did you notice, or I should ask, what did you notice when you were back on the line? More fatigue, more just daily pain? Like, how did that change and that you knew, yeah, I'm not fully healed?
Oh, I knew right away, just in jumping off the bumper on the tail end after I was pulling a line for this fire. It was probably my third shift back. And I remember jumping off, and your body and your ligaments are all still really loose, and your hips have widened, and your skeleton and structure has changed. And I felt it as soon as I jumped off the curb, just like everything felt loose. Like I felt unstable for the first time. And I had these sharp pains that felt like it was right at my hip, and it didn't go away. It actually, because of having burst my appendix just briefly before, I was so worried I was going to lose my gallbladder or another organ or something. So I was the whole time I was distracted from my job by this lingering pain that was really acute, but it just stayed. And it turns out after I went to the doctor a couple days later, it's just because I hyperextended those tendons just by
Wow.
just by moving and forcing my body past what it could do.
Wow.
Yeah, but of course, I just kept back with duty, but I had in the back of my mind, I took it easy on other things. Like I did a good job not rushing back to CrossFit and working out full time. I just saved my energy for the performing on the job.
Okay. So we're at the 6.5, 7 year-ish mark into your career.
Yeah. And then I did my other shoulder. I tore my labrum. And that was on a personal injury. I was riding my bike and I crashed my bike.
Oh,
and
God.
The tear was again right in between needing surgery or PT. But because I'd used all my sick time, I didn't have any sick time.
Oh, wow.
So instead of...
How long between those?
This was only like a year in between. So, and then when my daughter was an infant, with childcare, I had to use sick time for childcare sometimes. So that was just
the way it was.
Where it went to. So I didn't have any actual sick time saved. But coming off for that one seemed impossible at the time with my schedule change. And I already had a good thing going with my nannies. So I decided to push through it and PT on the side while I was still working, but I told my crew about it. So if there was any, and I was on an engine, so there was less exposure to having to run chainsaws and push a ladder overhead. It was more engine work, pulling hose, and I'm a pumper, so 9 out of 10 times I'm pumping on a fire. So
they tried to accommodate.
They tried to accommodate, and that I was just blessed at that time in my life to work with a great crew, which is a beautiful thing. As you know, once you find your right crew and your right fit, you all work together because you understand each other's weakness and strengths, and I still brought a lot to the table.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So already 8 months in, you've had 4 events that essentially could have required surgery.
Yeah.
And by the time the doctors are saying you need surgery or surgery would benefit you, you are in the thick of pain.
Yeah, I mean, it was just like normal.
Yeah.
Like both my shoulders just ached, and I just thought I kept telling myself it was from a lack of muscle. So I needed to put more muscle on, or I needed to work out harder to protect my body better. And so people kept offering advice. Let's do yoga or something easier and more gentle on your body to protect your frame. And of course, I didn't buy into it at the time because I had convinced myself my injuries were my fault, that I wasn't strong enough, and that's why I was injured. So
why do you think that was the go-to mindset for you?
I really, at this point in my growth, realize it comes from a place of being already a minority in the fire service. As a woman, I felt more susceptible to injuries, and that was what people just assumed or most of us have a career of 15 years and then we retire due to women just in general. That's our statistics. And didn't want to be a statistic. So I thought if I was hard-headed enough, I wouldn't be a statistic. I could do my full 30 years.
It's so interesting that we think this body hardening or this mind over matter will get us to that point, that it's those other people couldn't do it because they just weren't tough enough. When that's not the case.
And I'm going to learn from their example and be a lot tougher and show up tougher.
But that's not the case as what happened with your last injury, right?
Yeah, and that one, I mean, that was the injury of all injuries. It literally took me to my knees and really forced me to slow down and actually pay attention and get scans and figure out what was going on with my body. And in doing that process, I realized I had a slew of other injuries that I didn't even know about. I'd had persistent low back pain for over a year that I just thought was from not sleeping, from tossing and turning, from picking up medical patients, stuck between the toilet and the bathtub, precarious positions, you're moving. I just thought that was part of the job, but just typical. All of us complain about it. Yeah. Well, I had 3 herniated discs in my lumbar, and they were old injuries. And compared to my new injury in my neck, now I had, 6 discs total in herniation, and it was a wake-up call. And also when I tore my rotator cuff, that was the same rotator cuff, and maybe had I repaired it 100%, I wouldn't have had a full tear.
Isn't that crazy that we think if the pain, like our pain scale is just different than the average population, in that you had all these old injuries that showed up, you'd been living with that pain for you, if you're just living everyday life with it, might have been a 5 or a 6. When the injury and the pain sometimes don't always correlate to our reference point. So what happened after the event, after that fire that you hurt yourself, in the immediate after? So the next day or that shift, when did you say, like, this, I have to deal with this, like, this is not, we can't look at this the way that we did the others?
I knew because I had right side paralysis, I couldn't lift my arm. So I remember immediately after.
Oh, wow.
So, and I remember like going to my knees in pain and then grabbing my arm thinking I tore my shoulder, and that was it. And so thinking I could get back to the panel, I could still pull my levers and pump, been through this before, But then when I reached for the pump and my arm didn't come with me, and in my mind it was happening, that disoriented feeling that I got just from the disconnection, that was when I realized, oh my gosh, this is serious. Something is wrong. And then, of course, my body confirmed that. I started throwing up from the pain. And it was almost to the point where it was so painful that it stayed at like an 8 or 9 out of 10 pain, that it almost, the longer it went, the less painful it got, where it came down to about a 7 by the time I got home. And the ironic thing is, even when I was injured, I didn't admit it. I told my crew that I probably had food poisoning because I was throwing up. And I thought that was an easier way to go out. And I can't believe that now, just admitting that sounds so crazy.
Wait. So you injured yourself on this fire.
Yeah.
You started throwing up, but you continued pumping?
Yeah.
And did you finish out the shift, or did you go home?
No, I didn't. There was absolutely no way I could. And I just hid it for the fact of how sick I was.
Wow.
Because after we initially pump and we had the hydrant, as you know, as an engineer, your job is just to sit and wait now at that point. So as the fire wraps up, I didn't even stay for overhaul. I said I had to go. I was throwing up. Well, the throwing up was from the pain. And so I got home. I sat there trying to go to sleep, couldn't sleep, started pacing.
Okay, I just want to pause here. Why did you not go into the ER?
Yeah, absolutely. I should have gone into the ER. It would have been a lot smarter, and it's a lot better for your workman comp to be able to process and start getting treatment.
But what was behind the mindset, you think?
Because I knew it was a serious injury. And
denial.
I was denial. I was afraid of admitting it. And I thought, maybe this is like all the other times where it's going to be minor. But I knew in my gut that it was probably premonition that this is it. I could feel everything crumbling. Just the thought of having to navigate my schedule as a single parent again and changing the childcare I just established, even the thought of that was crippling to me. And I knew this was going to be a huge turning point, and I didn't want to start the process of recovery all over again.
Yeah. Which, anytime you have an injury, you have that crazy, like, oh no, like the sink in your, the drop into your stomach of dread.
Yeah, you hear 6 to 9 months, and it's like, that's a year in our lifetime.
So often departments can't/won't accommodate for that either, which is crazy because our bodies are literally the tools that we're using in the job.
Yeah.
So you couldn't sleep.
No, I couldn't sleep. That was the worst. I actually had a Apple Watch, and I would end up pacing a couple miles every night just around my house just because it felt more comfortable to move. I could manage the pain at like a 5 and just be moving about my house and feel fine.
You say a couple of nights. So how long did this go before you
I went 24 hours, and then I ended up going to the urgent care and then getting my scans and then finding out it was actually my neck that was injured. And then when I heard, oh, it's my neck, not just my shoulder, that's when I took it seriously and started doing the follow-ups, second opinions. I got booked immediately with a surgeon, orthopedic surgeon. So it just kind of escalated the process for me.
Okay, so here you were having to navigate this massive injury. Mm-hmm. How did that affect your mental health and the way that you were showing up every day? Because that completely changes things too.
Yeah, because it really did derail me. I mean, the thought of even trying to put my life together and how that would look was so stressful that I just continued to start shutting down. Mm-hmm. I was not able to make decisions anymore. And all my life became about these appointments I had to get to. And I wasn't at work, so I was
covered.
Let alone
being a mom.
And then my daughter's schedule to get to and accommodate. And luckily she was in school at this time, but still navigating through all that, I just started to shut down to where I became a shell. Like I stopped connecting with my daughter. Mm-hmm. I would either be connecting with her and I'd be so frustrated trying to explain something that, there's no way she should understand, but I needed the help. I couldn't use my right arm. It's like I needed her to step up a little bit. She was 7 years old. It's not her place to step up. She doesn't understand that. And then I would guilt myself or feel so much shame in needing help that we would just kind of started coasting through a lot more television, less connection, less communication. I just completely was withering away.
But that completely makes sense too in the fact that this is such a massive injury. There's so much pain, there's so much to manage, and you just it was beyond your resources.
Yeah, it was way beyond my resources, and I didn't even know where to find what I needed. Because I knew the depression was coming in, and now we're coming up to the holidays, which is already a hard time for me. With seasonal depression, it's always affected me. So I knew I was basically future tripping was a term I learned later in my therapy, but I was future tripping so much about how I was going to make it work in the next 6 months that I wasn't even recognizing the current present moment and where my mental health was. Like by November, so 2 months after my injury, by November, I was to the point where I couldn't remember if I brushed my teeth that day. Mm. So I was wearing the same clothes for a couple days in a row and I wasn't living in the present time. I was so worried about what was going to happen next. And then the news kept getting worse and worse every scan. Mm. And so it was all doom and gloom. And that was all I could feel.
When was your surgery scheduled for?
My scheduled surgery was originally for the first week of December. But by Thanksgiving time in November, I was highly suicidal. Mm. And there was no way that the doctor would see me and do surgery until I got mental help.
Wow. And
that was really when the point was, how do I do that? Because at that point, I've been going to therapy every week. Mm-hmm. I was doing all the things.
You're making effort. You're not ignoring the signs.
I'm not ignoring the signs. I had already gone to the doctor and gotten on an antidepressant and, was humbling myself just to do that. And it wasn't helping. None of it was.
Looking back now, being on the other side, studying what you're studying, why is it that the two are so intertwined, pain and our mental health, our ability to be present in the moment? Why is that so difficult?
It's so difficult because it actually affects us at a baseline level. So, for example, your significant unit of distress, they call it, on a scale from 1 to 10, how stressed are you? So 10, you're having a panic attack, you're super stressed, like the ultimate signs. 1 is you are floating through life. You know, we may drift into 1 occasionally on vacations, you know, after a wedding and that comes together. We don't stay at that. But our baseline can be anywhere from 2 to 3 to 4. That's where we need to go on an everyday level to be able to cope with whatever comes in. So that's your regular everyday, you're calm, collected, you're open to the conversation, you're not agitated right off the bat. But if you have any kind of pain, it actually increases anywhere from 2 to 4 degrees on your scale. So you went from a 2 as your baseline, now you're at a 4 or 5. So now you're that much closer to the ultimate like panic attack to where you have so much pain you can't tolerate it. So every single day it just increases your baseline, which causes, as the symptoms, the higher you get to that 10, you're more irritable. You have outbursts, you can't sleep, your mind is constantly racing. You succumb to those patterns that kind of replicate anxiety and what that would look like in your system.
But it's really just your body is responding to the pain.
And it's just responding to the pain. It increases, and your body works harder to fix a problem. So we all know that when we're sick, the white blood cells come in and your body just works harder, and that's why you're tired. Well, the same thing when we're physically injured. We need more rest because our body's focusing on that one area to fix and kind of offer compassion to. But how often do we actually rest and get to stop? I mean, we still have to work. We still have to manage our house. We still have to parent. We still have to do all these things. And pain is often chronic. So it's not like when you have the flu for 24 to 72 hours. We're talking, I mean, I had pain for 12 months.
Yeah.
I mean, it's chronic. You can't just turn your life off for that amount of time. So we're already running at a more tired level where we should honor that and sleep more, but we actually often don't.
And I remember in that time period, you were doing so much to try and manage the pain. You were anything that could possibly be done to manage the pain you were trying to do. What, if you're willing to share, both positives and not so positives that you looked to try and help with managing that capacity or even just dulling the pain in general, because that also is something that we deal with, pain management.
Mm-hmm. And pain management is a tricky thing these days because pharmaceutical companies want to just give you pain medications that block it and get you back to your life, not even addressing the problem. So that was what happened. I got pain medicine right off the bat, which may have dulled it a couple degrees, but I was still in so much pain. You can only have so many muscle relaxers. So having gone through that and doing daily yoga every morning, just trying to loosen my body and keep it like able to move and function. Some good things that I did, I found that being in a yoga sling or like the
like aerial yoga
that they have, that actually brought so much relief, hanging upside down and decompressing my low back. It just straightened my back enough. And I mean, it brought me down to like a 2, I don't know, pain scale. I mean, significant. But you can only hang upside down for so long. So, after 20 minutes, you're going to pass out when you come back around. But I actually was so addicted to that 20 minutes of a break from the pain that I installed one in my living room. In my own house, because at night when I'm pacing, I could take a break and just hang for a little bit. And it dual purpose. Now we use it. My daughter has a swing, and her and her friends use the yoga sling way more than me now.
Okay, so yoga, the aerial sling, we had some
pain
medication.
And those are all the good options that I went to. And then for negative vices, which I do want to touch on because vices are there for a reason. And they really did serve me during this period. They really did help me get through this span of time. Like I went to THC and weed because it would dull the voices in my head and the inner shame I felt having no purpose. And like, what was I doing with my life? And just continuous fear in the background that I didn't even know was signs later, having understood PTSD. It makes sense. I was always on guard, but even though I wasn't aware of it. And then another side effect or blessing from THC is disassociation. So it is actually a pain reliever in itself because it pulls you out of your physical body of being able to feel, and it pulls you into your logical brain, which when you have pain management is beneficial. It actually lowers your pain. But I would be so disassociated, basically so high throughout the day that I couldn't even feel my feet on the ground and I would just float through. But the negative side of what happened is it put me up into my head to where I was with just my own thoughts. So now I was activating my mental health, my depression, anxiety, because of just the jumbled thoughts and the constant worrying and the future tripping and the daydreaming and just thinking about every scenario that could and was going wrong in my life. I just ultra focused on it, which is another side effects that it does. And at the time it served me. So it kept, a lot of the parts of me that we have and we're going to talk about later, it kept a lot of those at bay by just ignoring them and numbing them to me. But it also increased my awareness to what was going on, my anxiety, my daydreaming, the future tripping. It had such a negative effect in the long run. And that's where the addiction crossed the line, where it becomes like out of my control, to where it felt better to be under the influence and have that pain relief and in my own head than it did having the pain and being in my own. So it was like pick the lesser of the evil.
So November, you get the news that your surgery's off. And then there's this massive decline. I still remember the day you called me. I was at the training academy and you were just so upset. Like, I don't know how to do this anymore. The pain is just always there. I think it was a day or two after that you ended up going to Deer Hollow. And I remember thinking that, like, wow, I knew she was going through a lot, but I didn't know it was to this degree.
Yeah.
And it's so hard to be that vulnerable because you're already in pain. You're already trying so hard to the best of your ability. You don't want to ask for more and more and more help. But what was the tipping point where you knew you needed to get help?
I had a medicine journey, and that just opened my mind and allowed me to be present in the moment instead of thinking so much in the future. And it allowed me just to be present with the feelings that I was feeling. And what it showed me was how dark I had gotten. It showed, like, just reflecting on from September to November and getting that news, just reflecting on how far I declined was enough to put me in such a state I became suicidal. So when I became suicidal, that frightened me to no other. And that was when I started realizing, okay, I need like serious help here. And I was already speaking with a peer mentor. He's on the peer support team, and he was actively helping me like get resources. And I did everything he said and offered. And I mean, talk about a blessing having him in my life, but I was doing all those things. And when he recommended Deer Hollow for an entire 41 days, I was so in the thick of my like suicidal ideation and the worry of abandoning my daughter for 41 days. Like, where would she go for 41 days? I was like, I can't do that. There's no way. We got to find some other program. So when he left my house that day, I had said, no, I can't do Deer Hollow. And, let's find some alternative options. I can stay in town. But that was the night I did my medicine journey. And I stayed in that suicidal realm for a solid 48 hours to where I didn't leave my house. My daughter was at her dad's, and I was so afraid to get in my car and drive anywhere because all I could think about was just crashing, driving off the bridge. Just every single way you could do it, it just floated through our minds to the point where I just stayed home. I was too afraid to do anything. And by intervention and the universe just knowing what I needed, Darren, the peer support mentor, showed up on my house just on a day, 3 days later to check up on me. And that was when I finally, he knew it, I knew it. I was just at the point where I needed help. And that was when I told him I would go.
Mm.
And thankfully, I had the support for him to make the call for me. Because I was so incoherent, crying with the realization I was going to leave my daughter. And then the worry of what do I do now? How do I even make this work? Like financially, what happens? I'm going to be gone that long. And I was so blessed to have him make that call for me and get me enrolled. And the ironic thing is, once I was there, 41 days wasn't enough.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I stayed 2 more cycles through the program just to be able to come back and integrate back into life.
I remember just briefly touch on this because a future episode we'll talk more about this, but when you came back, you were telling me your story, and I was so floored by the concept that as you started doing this intensive internal work, the pain started changing too.
Oh, 100%. I remember, it was significant from day 1 going to the recovery center to leaving on day 41 to go to the next part of the session. The difference in my pain, had significantly gone from an 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10 pain to just at a baseline of about 6, 7 out of 10. So I started to be able to, I couldn't lift or bear any weight, but like I could lift my arm all the way up to my shoulder level and move and pick up things up. I could write notes and use my arm like almost within the first week as I started to relax. But one thing I'll never forget is on the second night when I finally just realized, okay, this is where I'm at. I'm going to get the most out of this. And I'm a little bit of a perfectionist, so I dove into it with the mindset, I'm going to fix me. This is why I'm here. So that night, after making that connection and that promise to myself, I slept so good. And I could just feel my body physically melting into the mattress to sleep and like finally letting go of so much tension and that my body was just holding on to through my back, and it was just afraid to get hurt more. It was protecting itself. And for my body to be vulnerable and like try to trust me again, that was the first time I noticed that connection trying to come back.
Wow, that's incredible. Why and how is it that as you started doing this inner work, your body actually changed and responded? Like that's, the word is psychosomatic, and it is, but it's not at the same time. Like it's a very real thing. Pain is a very real thing, and yet as you work in the soul and you work on the things that are, like you said, those parts and the traumas, and that your body begins to let things go.
Mm-hmm. And one of the most powerful things how I kind of think about that process is this article I read in my master's program, and they talk about the myofascial tissue that goes all the way from tips of your toes to the top of your head, and it actually sends signals. So it's picking up the awareness of everything going on. So when you stub your toe, you feel it in your brain and you register there's pain, and then you feel it and have a reaction. Well, those signals are the same as when we're going through an experience. So when we experience something traumatic or witness it or go through it, because of those signals, they're receiving what's going on. And that's where we get the knots and the tension, and that roadway that goes all the way starts to be blocked. And so it just starts to compound. And as you know, if you block a dam, for instance, more and more is going to come downstream and just keep stacking onto that area until it changes the actual direction of the river. That's what happens with our body and our fascia. That's why it's so important to do massage and stretch and work your fascia as well as your muscles, because it stores the trauma you go through as well. And I learned this just by, as I let go of some of my big childhood roots, some of the big stuck points I've had in my life. Each day that I resolve something, or I at least put the awareness to why it was affecting me now, each time I had some kind of release in my body of some tension somewhere that just was noticeable. I mean, whether it was my low back pain that started to go away, and also I was in an environment where I was resting. I was eating 3 meals a day. I wasn't using any negative alcohol or weed. So my body was just able to function as it's supposed to. And that's the point of the whole program, is to get your body responding and back on track.
At the end, and now looking back, what, aside from we'll say the chronic pain, what was the chronic pain teaching you?
It was an interesting wake-up call to a humbling moment where I realized, I wonder how much of this could have been preventable had I given myself proper rest and just done some more foundation work and some of the little accessory muscles. I'm curious what maybe my injury would have looked like then. But one thing that it showed me is just I really did need to take that time to just sit and reflect on all my childhood stuff and be able to go back and even work on my career, tragedies and harassment I've overcome, and just to actually go back and list all the traumas I've been through that are either stuck in my body somewhere or stuck in my mind, holding me back. It's just amazing to see the connection between the physical and the mental, and being able to, oh, okay, I know I hold the tension of my fear of judgment or fear of social anxiety. I hold it all on my shoulders because I noticed before social engagements, I'm wearing my shoulder earrings where I'm like tense, preparing, I'm guarding myself. So now I know how to use the somatics to offset that and, drop my shoulders, feel relaxed, tell myself, I trust myself, I trust where I'm going, who I'm going to spend my time with, and just spend that 30 seconds to attune to that need or that part of me now. Because really, at the end of the day, it's just a signal. And then if I explore it and get curious about it, my body's telling me what it needs to run at optimal performance all the time.
Do you think now that pain is a mirror to what's going on inside?
Oh, yeah. I really do, because I notice now in my healed state after surgery and PT and rehab, I have no pain. Like many, many days I go and I don't have any pain. And I notice when I'm not doing my preventative maintenance, like if I miss a couple weeks of my therapy, if I'm not doing my journaling a couple days in a row, I start to notice that the tension comes back. I feel it in my shoulders, I feel it in my back, I feel it in my jaw. Even just not speaking up for myself, I notice my jaw gets tense and I carry that. And it's my body telling me, hey, maybe you should just trust yourself and be honest and speak up for yourself. So again, it's a signal, and then it's up to me to respond and correct it.
There are so many of us in first response that just say yes to everything.
Oh, yeah.
And then that builds and builds and builds. Also, what I'm hearing you say is, to a degree, the pain kind of lets you know some of those signals are about boundaries, like proper rest, speaking up for yourself, not taking shit that you shouldn't.
Yeah.
How is that now for you, having been through these really big lessons? How does that look different for you?
It looks different in that I can tell sooner what's happening. So, I always put it together what I needed to do in the end, or if I needed to repair a friendship or maybe end a friendship. It's like, for a while, and dating is a perfect example. I've known for a while I need to end this relationship. Yet I stay another year because it's just like this soft, let it go kind of thing. Well, my body's given me a signal right off the bat. And when I recognize it, when I feel, my shoulders get guarded, when I'm around a certain person, I'm starting to pick up that energy, and I'm getting curious about it. And what is it telling me? It's either telling me one of three things. Something about the other person is something I don't like in myself. Something about the other person maybe I do like and I want more of, so it's like a jealous feeling. Or maybe it's just a feeling that this isn't right and our energy, is off. Something isn't right, we're forcing this. Either one of those are just signals to me in reflection of what I can possibly do to show up different or decide if it serves me or not, and have the boundary to then end that relationship. I've had to do that recently, and the feeling beforehand, I could feel my tension and my shoulders rising. My lip actually has a little quiver to it, and all these little body cues. They're just signals or notifications that it isn't working. And then afterwards, I get validated, and those symptoms really do go away.
Wow.
And it's almost, again, like that dimmer switch where it's like, oh, this is what's going on. I'm going to dim it back down. And it's as simple as that.
After this long journey and these big lessons, what would you tell our listeners are some cues that they can take for rest versus rebuild? Because sometimes your pain also, like you said, like there are small muscles that we need to work on, or there is a rebuilding aspect that as we give the body more support that it needs, it'll be more resilient. But then also there's the rest component. And sometimes, like I know for myself, migraines can be a sign that like shut down.
Me too.
Rest.
Mm-hmm.
Like stop the crazy, cancel the appointments, don't work on the projects, like just rest and be. So from your experience, what are some of those that they can take from you that are cues to rest versus rebuild?
Migraines is a huge one. And that is one for me that means rest, means sleep. So I know that's when I've definitely crossed the line there. And then other signals that I would notice would pop in would be that tired, heavy sensation in your body where you just feel sluggish, like you're running through quicksand. And that to me can be both a rest, but also it can be a time to rebuild. So that can be a time, instead of no productivity, that's a great time to do a yin yoga or a yoga nidra practice, or still move your body, but in a way that meets it where it's at. We don't need to go sprint or do these quick movements or go lift weights when we're already feeling sluggish and tired. And that is where I've been in the past, where I'm going to have a quick pre-workout energy. I'm going to get jacked up. I'm going to offset this feeling and feel great after. And again, those vices are there because they work, and that's what happens. But our body also, if we listen to it, it's preventative. So we do that yoga instead. Well, then the next day we wake up and we feel better. So then we can actually do the hard workout we wanted to do. And then there are other times where, for me, the biggest indicator is my emotions. I get really emotional when I need to actually rest. So if I get that full, like, heavy feeling, I can push through and be productive. But when I'm emotional, I know it's not the right time to push through. And maybe it's the right time for me just to rest or take a nap or do a simple meditation or hold really, really gentle, like yoga nidra, just an hour session where you do only like 4 different poses over that time. Something just really gentle that leads to rest and recovery.
When our listeners are hearing your story and they're taking in and contemplating what you've been through, they're seeing you as a mirror maybe for different aspects
Absolutely.
of their own life, how do they start the process of changing their relationship to the pain so that they can start seeing that pain as a teacher, as feedback, as cues? Because for some, that's a really big idea.
Yeah, and that in itself was overwhelming to me. When I first came into Deer Hollow, I'm like, what are you people talking about? Body cues, and like, what emotions? Sure, sad, bad, angry, and happy. Those are the only emotions I knew. And it really takes time and preventatively, like sitting down and taking the time to give yourself the opportunity to actually just figure out what is going on. And I wish I had a better answer that was something you could use like right away.
Yeah. And
although it is something you can use right away, it does take time to sit and notice the patterns. and reflect on the pattern of, oh, I recognize I always feel this way every time I go to my job. Or, oh, I feel like this every time I have an argument with my spouse. I'm highly emotional and I just need to sleep. I recognize I feel best when I do that. It's over time you recognize those patterns, and then you can start implementing the practices, whatever relieves how you're feeling. So then it becomes a tool that you can use, just like when we talked about body scans and meditation. Then you can use it as a body scan to see where your injuries are. What part of you needs some compassion? It's like, okay, my right knee hurts again. That doesn't mean I can't go to the gym. I still have one good leg and two good arms. I can do something else. It's just recognizing those patterns over time and then putting it together. And I've been in recovery for almost 2 years, and I'm recognizing patterns in myself sooner than I did before, but not soon enough. I wish I picked up on it a little sooner. I find myself making, not a mistake, but doing the same thing a couple times before recognizing I don't like it.
Well, learning and undoing and doing.
Oh, undoing 40 years of bad habits.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just having one thought process, and now full 360 going whole different mindset.
I remember when I was in the spring, really burned out. There was a morning that I woke up, and I've had chronic neck issues since I was in the fire service. And I woke up this one morning in particular, and I had been taking, over-the-counter pain meds, morning, night, which had never happened to me before. So here I was, probably 3 weeks off the line, and it wasn't going away. And I woke up, the pain was just so present. So there I was in this minor panic. Like, it started spinning out, like genuinely panicking over, like, is this ever going to go away? Is this always going to be my life? How do I even deal? I don't want to get out of bed. And I was winding myself up more and more and more. And then, funny enough, I remember that Yoga Nidra, which is literally the practice that I teach, is actually proven to be a huge support in pain management and reduction. And I'll put in the show notes this particular meditation, but I had this thought of I need to search right now for a Yoga Nidra for pain meditation. And I found this practitioner I really like, and I played it, and I was sitting there, and it talked about and took you through the process of changing your relationship to the pain. So literally, while you're noticing in your body, like you said, the knee that aches, or in my case, the neck, it also had you change your orientation and perspective to it so that it brought in colors. So you have a positive association to your favorite colors. So take the sensations you're feeling in your neck and assign these colors that you love to that. And it was so fascinating that after 3 days of doing this, the pain completely started changing for me. And it's that idea that our bodies use pain as a signal, but sometimes the signal is not actually the degree that the problem is. Like in your case, before you thought, a 5 or a 6, like that's surely not a horrible injury, when in fact it was. And the opposite can also be true, that as we don't listen and as we're not giving our body the support it needs, it can increase that pain to get our attention. So this meditation, added colors and textures and things that like help you start relaxing into your body. And it just took away the edge, the panic, the things that were sending me, over the line of what I could deal with. And it helped with this extra layer of relaxation. And like we said in our building our relationship with body episode, pain requires us to build a relationship with it because it is our body reaching out to us. So we can choose to ignore it, we can choose to listen, and we can choose to actually take action and do something about it, give it the support it needs. But learning to orient ourselves to the pain, I think, is also what helps us to respond to it versus reacting to it. Because you and I both have had these experiences where the pain just gets so overwhelming, you almost can't help but react to it. And it's like when you can take a moment and pause and give yourself a little bit of space and change your orientation, it can really help the way that we just kind of go about in the world trying to live with pain. Because as first responders, we're going to have pain. Like, that is unavoidable.
Yep, and we're going to have hurt, and we're going to have the little soft injuries that just take maybe a day or two to get through.
Yeah. But that pain, if we can just see it as messages, our body is trying to communicate, our body is trying to create a bridge to us, it's not something to run away with, it's something, again, to come home to. How would you say now your relationship with your body is different because of that pain?
Oh, the bridge that it tells me, comes to me, just to use your metaphor, it's instant. I mean, when I actually give myself the time to sit down and do a body scan real quick, just like yoga nidra, where you go from your head to foot, you can do that in 30 seconds, and then whatever it's telling me, I just plan my day around. So now in the recovery version, it's instead of forcing the things into my day, I'm now, okay, are these things, can I receive these things for the day?
That's
so
beautiful.
to speak. So that gentle shift, and I say gentle, it took a year and a half to get here, but that shift just allows me to have more productivity. And we're looking at productivity wrong. It's like every day, every second, what are we doing? What are we producing? But I look at it over a week now. It's, am I hitting all my goals for that week? Did I go 80-20 on how I showed up? I mean, just the body scan and noticing where my body's hurting, or maybe my brain is hurting that day. Maybe I have a lot of depression that day and I need to meet myself, in a softer place to bring myself up to my baseline. But it really has given me the power to kind of manipulate my day the way I need to fit into it.
And I want to close with, you said it took you a year and a half to get to this point. This journey requires giving yourself grace.
A lot of grace and compassion.
A lot of grace and compassion and patience, because you are essentially learning a whole new language. And your body has been through so much along that journey. Like, your mindset needs grace, but also your body needs grace. And yet that process, as we've harped on over and over and over again, it's so absolutely worth it. So what would be your closing bottom line point to someone who has had chronic pain for a long time, is can't be off the line, is having to work through it, is having to find resources and overcome that that sense of dread and foreboding that, like, is this going to be my life forever? What would your note of encouragement be for them?
I think the big thing is giving yourself the allowance to lower your expectations. Just in the fact that it's okay to not be able to do 100% of the things. It's okay to be able to be at 80% and be working towards recovery. It's okay to spend, hopefully you can get to a space where you allow yourself 20 minutes to an hour to do a meditation, like you said. Like, that was beautiful with the colors. I've done meditations personally with the light, and imagine the light going into that pain or expansion and spreading it throughout my body instead of localized one area, and that really helps for me. But just allowing the grace to be able to do that and implement it in your life, and then accept whatever is going on. And one thing that I like to do that just as goes along with my gratitude practice is then I go and I look at what does feel good. Like, what parts I always close on and what feels good, because I think if we pay attention to the parts that are performing as they're supposed to, and really thank them for being able to show up and carry us the rest of the way while we're not 100%, I think that's a really good place to end on in general in the practice, and that would be my final closing.
Thank you so much for just sharing your journey and the vulnerability of that. It's such a raw experience, and yet I I think this, as you'd agree, this is our mission, that bringing this authentic, raw, real world reality of what is it to be a female first responder, and this is all the things that we practically deal with. But just because they're our everyday life doesn't mean it's not hard. Mm-hmm. So thank you so much. I'm taking lessons away from you. I know that our audience definitely will too, and I'm just so grateful for you and the lessons that you've lent to us today. Can't wait for our next episode.
Me neither. IFS, my favorite.